Let's get started. I don't know how many people are on here, but we'll keep going. I'm going to give you some background. You guys, if you're if you guys are interested in this story today, I've been reading up on it a lot and kind of putting some thoughts together. I'm going to give you some background from New York Times on the most latest stuff about the Don Lemon situation and your all's local reporter as well, who was arrested. And then we're going to talk about it. I'm going to go through. I mean, I got it. We're going to be here a while, honestly. But you're with me, so you're going to be here a while. Um, all right. So you had former CNN correspondent Don Lemon, who no longer works for CNN. He's an independent reporter, and he was charged for violating federal law during the protest at church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Okay, we know that. Charged with conspiracy to deprive the congregants of the church their rights to interfere and to interfere with religious freedom in a house of worship. Reviving the case that was rejected last week by the magistrate. You probably remember last week they tried to charge him with this by a federal magistrate. The federal magistrate said, "Nah, there's nothing there," and they would not charge the two journalists who were there. And a little bug there. Get rid of him. Let's get rid of that. So then they didn't charge him last week, and the DOJ and Pam Bondi, she's a tenacious. Use another adjective after that. But she was fired up apparently because two people would not charge him in federal court. So they found another means to charge him, and that's what you saw today. Last night they arrested him, according to Don Lemon, in the middle of the night. Some other people say he was in his lobby of his hotel, whatever. And then I guess this morning, I think it was this morning, they arrested the other journalist in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and charged her with a crime. Actually, sent. I think I remember reading they sent. Let me just look. I had a little thing on. It was a strange thing to me that who they sent to arrest her. It, DEA. They sent the DEA, Drug Enforcement Agency, to arrest her. If you ever wanted to know how none of these people are staying in their lane, I mean, unless there was a big drug bust at her house, I don't know why they sent the DEA. So they've charged him with these crimes. They sought $100,000 bond against Don Lemon for what they say was his disruption of this service. And the judge laughed that one out and refused to apply a bond and let him out of his own recognizance. Didn't even ask him for a plea agreement. So I think you can see where this is going. But the charges are quite serious. I mean, you could spend time in jail, like prison, if convicted of these. So you have to take them seriously. But my thought is, just right off the bat, these are going to get thrown out. He's going to have to spend a lot of money, which is what Trump likes to do, use, American taxpayer resources to charge people with crimes so that they have to spend their fortune defending themselves. And that serves to, as a deterrent to intimidate. And because he's not using his own money, he can do this all day long with every type of protest or every type of journalist. Let's see. So you guys have probably seen some of the video where they're in there. I haven't seen, we don't know. I don't think we know all the video that they may have and what other people may have also taken video of. So I'm going to be very careful what I think I know and I'm going to make some sort of assumptions, but I'll tell you their assumptions. And if there's something else out there that you guys know that I don't know, I've been working on this today for a couple hours, but I'm by no means in Minneapolis and not necessarily seen every piece of video from that protest. So they went into this church, and if you see the video from the protest, they calmly went in. This group, a couple dozen people, went in, and they sat down in the pews, and then they started protesting. Don Lemon went in there. He says as a journalist, and this other local reporter also said she went as a journalist. They both have credentials as journalists, so it's clear. I mean, your local reporter, I did some work on her today. She's got a bunch of regional Emmy nominations and I think a regional Emmy, which, and that was from a while back. So, she's already credentialed as a journalist, right? She has a local show she works on. And of course, Don Lemon was like, a decade and a half or something at CNN before they fired him, and has been continuing to work as a journalist since then. When journalists accompany protesters, they're going with them, or they might be walking in and observing. Here's the most important thing I would say. If you're a protester, I don't think you're a journalist. If you're a journalist, I don't think you're a protester. Some people are in Minneapolis and around the country at these protests are calling themselves protesters and journalists. I think that's a very slippery slope, and it could get you in some serious legal trouble if somebody's arrested for something like this. But in this case, both these reporters said they were reporting at the time, and and the DOJ says, this is a pretty slam dunk case because they have video of these people here. Yeah, they have video of them there reporting. Don Lemon was talking to one of the church officials on camera, asking him questions. And from what I saw, I didn't see them asking Don to leave. I saw them describing what happened and saying what they thought and talking to Don. And that's what journalists do. They do it on both sides, including I've done it with the Taliban, to be honest with you. When you want to know what the Taliban, why they're fighting Americans, you got to talk to them. You can't talk to the Americans. Right. So it happens. And the best thing you can do there is stay neutral. And I think that from all I've seen, they talked about how this protest was an affront on these people's religious freedoms and meant to intimidate them. And okay, so that's a serious accusation, especially when you're going to another church. Now, let's just think about I'm agnostic, so I'm not a big church guy, but I used to go to church when I was a kid. My dad had me go, and I was one of those servers that wear the white coat, carrying the cross down the middle. It's Episcopalian, it's sort of like Catholic light. So I know a little bit about church, but not much anymore. I don't go very often, unless somebody asks me and I'm friends with them or something like that. I respect people's religious beliefs. You go into a church in the middle of a service and you start protesting there. It does kind of get into gray area, right? Because you are actively in somebody else's space. But the other thing about churches, as we all know, is that they're welcoming to everyone, right? I mean, that's the whole thing about church. We welcome everyone, especially the Christians. They're real big on that. We welcome you in. You want to hear about Christ and all that kind of stuff. So great. So they welcome everybody. So if these people weren't welcome in there, and these people were not parishioners of that church, somebody probably would have told them right at the beginning, hey, what are you here for? You're not welcome, etc. Nobody, in my understanding, nobody has said that. They walked in peacefully, sat down, and started protesting. We'll talk about the protest a little more later. But, the most important thing, I think, is that it's a real gray area as to the church has a First Amendment freedom of religion, and the protesters have freedom of speech. And so the law is seemingly a little bit ambiguous, and I think it's going to be really hard to convict the protesters on this. And they're charging with federal crime. Let's think about that. Any type of trespassing situation where somebody would get moved out or charged with trespassing or even arrested for trespassing, it usually happens with a local police organization. Local police would come in, somebody would file a complaint or call them. They would come and they would say, hey, listen, you guys got to leave. You're going to be trespassed if you don't, and you could be arrested for trespassing. And usually either people get arrested voluntarily as protesters and they send them and they fine them with something and they release them on whatever charges, after they're bailed out. And then they go to court and deal with the trespassing charge later. But that didn't happen here. What happened is a federal Department of Justice has charged them with federal crimes. And that is pretty sketchy, to be honest with you. The fact is, a lot of times these alleged crimes that are happening in Minneapolis, the people who are trying to charge people with the crimes, they're not local police. They're the federal government. So that's intimidation. Very seldom do you see local police coming in and going, hey, this protest is getting out of hand. You haven't seen a lot of destruction, really. I mean, I know somebody kicked in a taillight. Pretty terrible, huh? But, most of the time, these have been fairly peaceful protests, aside from whistles screaming in their ears and bullhorns and stuff like that. For the most part, the only people who seem to get hurt are the civilians. They get shot and killed. They get dragged out of their cars. They get pulled out into the snow and with no clothes on and arrested. I mean, this is happening. The agents, there hasn't been a DHS agent killed, or excuse me, there hasn't been a DHS agent who's died since 2024. And in 2024, the guy who died was this African-American DHS agent who died of cancer. And they list him on his website as dying in the line of duty because he was at 9/11 and he got cancer from the fallout of the 9/11 from the towers. That's the last time an agent's died. We've had 6 people die in custody this year alone in the month of January at the hands of detention facilities, ICE detention facilities. 6. No agents have been killed. And if any have been injured, it's probably been pretty light because they'd be screaming bloody murder if it wasn't. So this is just something to think about. They don't send the cops in because realistically, the cops aren't seeing this stuff as major crime. Trespassing would be handled totally by a local police force. And my experience I used to cover cops, so it's like cops would come in and trespass you. That's it. So they've taken it to a whole new level. Let's talk about some of the things that really bug me about this case. Don Lemon was seen as, interfering with the church. We talked about this, right? I mean, he went in, he spoke, he was interviewed on camera with this other pastor, this other church official who was there. That was not the person in question. Um, and you know, I don't see they're going to be able to do much with his charge. Um, we talked about they didn't ask him to immediately leave. Which if you're trespassing, you're disrupting a service to the level that the feds are accusing you of. At the beginning, they didn't ask him to leave. Eventually, they did ask him to leave. It seemed like that would be a trespassing situation. Um, just going through some notes here. I think Don Lemon has a civil case, and I think the other journalist who's there has a civil case. Once they get through the criminal side of it, I think their lawyers are. I mean, I would be very surprised if they didn't sue the federal government over civil violations of their First Amendment rights. If it's one thing to defend yourself against something, but it's another thing to have your rights taken away. And when the U.S. government, under the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law establishing illegal laws against your right to um, speak and have free speech and freedom of the press and freedom of religion. That's a First Amendment right. And when you come in and you arrest somebody for exercising that First Amendment right, you better be sure when you say they're part of the protest that they're part of the protest, because otherwise you've got yourself in a civil rights situation where I think Don Lemon and this other journalist could successfully sue the federal government for violating their civil rights. And for trying to intimidate them as well, because this is about intimidation. Don Lemon has a history with Donald Trump. When he was at CNN, he routinely called Trump out on his bullshit and called him a liar all the time. So Trump did not like this guy, right? And remember, Bondi brought these charges after two judicial officials decided they could not find probable cause to charge them with anything. So Bondi's going to be going back and going, well, you think she's talking to Donald Trump and he's going, I don't care. Find something to charge him with. That's what I think's happening. I have no proof of it at all. I'm just speculating. But they do not have a good history. So I would take that into consideration. And so I think when you're thinking about a civil case down the line, all these things come into play. Here's one. He's black. And so is the other reporter picked up. There's been reporters all month long at all these protests, all of them. And I'm certain that many of these officials felt like people were interfering with their ability to do work, obstructing justice, all that kind of stuff. But right now, these two people being charged with crimes that seem ambiguous or ridiculous, frivolous, and they happen to be black reporters, both of them. Isn't that interesting? I don't know whether that comes into play or not, but I know the ICE does not like brown people, do they? They have not had a tendency to like brown people. I just think about that. They had federal agents pick him up in Los Angeles before the Grammys, right? So this investigation after the magistrate wouldn't charge them and the federal appeals judge would not charge them, they figured out a way to charge them, and they picked him up at a hotel in Miami, in LA, which seems weird to me because aren't we having problems with resources? I mean, the Department of Justice has been telling us all along it takes a long time to release all these Epstein files at 2 million cases. I know some came out today. A lot of the stuff that came out today was largely stuff we already knew because it was in civil cases or criminal complaints that had been filed earlier. A lot of it's new, not new stuff. And I tell you what didn't come out today, a bunch of the people who were accused of violating these women's rights. Those people didn't come out today. And watch, they're not going to come out. They're not coming out. Only thing that's going to come out is they're going to release all this stuff right now. And then they're going to use that stuff that's being released to say things like, this stuff came out before and it never went anywhere. And the reason it didn't go anywhere because everybody knew it wasn't true. So they're starting to plant a seed in your mind and they're going to continue to roll this stuff out slowly. And none of it's going to have anything negative that hasn't already been there. There's stuff about Trump that's coming out of that stuff, but most of that stuff has all come out already through court proceedings. So you know, just be aware. This is another nice distraction. You charge a journalist, you get the intimidation factor of that. You charge some protesters, you get to intimidate protesters. Pam Bondi comes out and Tom Homan comes out and says, Tom Homan's basically saying, hey, we got this database and we're going to start, when you get charged with stuff and get in trouble for things, we're going to let your employer know. You're going to be on our database. That doesn't sound like intimidation, does it? Right? You're not trying to intimidate somebody when you call their employer and say, we think these guys are criminals. So they're actually setting up a criminal conspiracy to take away the rights of Americans and journalists as well. This is something that's, this is the playbook. And I think they're too dumb to understand that they're all going to be held accountable for this stuff in a while. They better hold on to government through, some Gestapo, Third Reich type shit. Because if they don't, there's going to be a lot of people going to jail. A lot of stuff that they're doing does not have statute of limitations, especially these two murders, right? They think they're going to be able to pardon people preemptively so they don't get charged with murder later. That's going to be interesting. If these cases are charged in state court, you can't pardon state court criminal charges. So, I know I'm going back and so I'm doing a little Hunter S. Thompson by accident here, which is, here's the storyline, here's the arc, and I'm kind of doing the old, that's okay. Just hang with me. Yeah. Remember yesterday we had the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, going down and getting the records in Fulton County, Georgia, of all the ballots, 500 boxes, unprecedented in our history. This is a scary, scary development. He is dead set on trying to prove that the election was stolen in Georgia. So he's going to do whatever. And when they have it in their chain of custody from now on, we don't know what they've done with it. So they've already screwed up the chain of custody because we cannot trust them. You've had the governor and secretary of state office, they're both Republicans, certify these elections in Georgia multiple times. So we know that these were legitimate elections, according to the Republicans in charge of the elections in Georgia. But this guy is dead set on trying to find a way to make it seem as though they have not done elections properly in Georgia. It's bullshit. And that incident yesterday coincided with these arrests coming up last night and this morning. You're taking the narrative away from what's important about our democracy, and you're shining a light and intimidating in the same breath journalists and protesters, so that it looks like, oh my God, this story has happened. You're taking away our First Amendment rights. No, the protesters. Oh my God, what are we going to do? In the meantime, the FBI and Kash Patel sneaking in there and and collecting boxes of ballots. Hugely huge story. So I know this is really tough because Minneapolis it's a big story right now, but try to figure out a way to divide your attention and keep up, because this motherfucker is throwing shit at the walls, Jello everywhere, and seeing what sticks, distracting from certain things. He is flooding the field with everything so that nobody can keep up with anything. I mean, I was trying to decide in the last 2 or 3 days the kind of stuff I would cover. I can really only do a couple hits a day. Otherwise, the algorithm gets fucked up and nobody sees anything. And so I'm trying to pick and decide what stuff I'm going to report on and commentate on. And there's just so much. It's crazy. I could go into the whole Canadian decertification of the plane thing, right? And go, he wants to decertify 5,500 Canadian planes. Oh my God, that's going to, right? It's a distraction. His tweets are a distraction. He had a prayer service for Melania so that she would have a chance to win the Oscars. Everybody's like, let's pray that she gets an Oscar in a movie that nobody in the world is going to see, nobody cares about. Distraction. Okay. Stay focused. Here's the story. And most people haven't talked much about it. Here's the story. Why did these people go protest? They went and protested because one of the pastors at that organization, that church, is also the head of ICE in in St. Paul. He runs all those teams. The ones you guys are pissed off about in Minneapolis, St. Paul. He runs these teams. And, there's a press conference out there where he's talking about how excited he is to have that new role. Just look it up. He's out there standing in front of a government placard talking about how significant and important it is to, have legal immigration and blah, 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 blah. In the same breath, he's a pastor. And knowing that this ICE organization has been going through and tormenting not only undocumented immigrants, but documented immigrants and Americans, and killing Americans they were going to protest that. Like, is this very Christian? That's the question they were asking. Are you really Christian? And if you're Christian, why are you doing this? Why are you allowing this? Why are you allowing non-judicial warrants to be a reason to now go into? Why are you not telling Pam Bondi? I know you say it's okay to go out uh, with non-judicial warrants and knock in these doors, but madam, that's against the Fourth Amendment of our U.S. Constitution, and we're Christians, and we don't do that. We follow the law, right? So that's what these people are protesting. Let's not lose track of that. Uh, it's pretty important. It's pretty important stuff that they're reporting on. And Don Lemon, in asking questions, those are the questions he's asking. Doesn't this seem unchristian? Doesn't this seem not democratic? How can you, as being a pastor of this organization, and yet in the same breath, watching your ICE agents violate the law, violate the First, Second, Fourth Amendments of the Constitution, and any number of amendments in between. So that's the story, and the story is getting lost because now the focus is on Don Lemon, and that's not good. We always talk in journalism about how we're not the story. The story is the story, and that's part of the reason why I loved being a producer. I didn't have to be in front of the camera, uh, talking about myself and all that kind of stuff. And I liked the role of being behind the camera because the light stayed shining on the importance of what that story was, whether it was, Afghan children being killed in Afghanistan or Abu Ghraib or, all those kinds of stories that you're shedding a light on. Print journalists have it even better because they're just their names at the top and it's about the reporting they do. Don has always been a little bit of a showboat. You have to kind of do that when you're in television, I guess, in some respects. And I think that, but it doesn't change the fact that he has a First Amendment right? So he has the First Amendment right to be there. And if they would have asked him to leave, multiple times and something he didn't leave, then it's a trespass. It's a trespass misdemeanor at the most. They talk about doxing. So, when they asked about this particular agent, it's going crazy trying to find his name again. Sorry about this. Just give me a second. Hang with me. It's in all my notes that I just can't find it right now. You pulled up for me. I'll pull it up on online. Name of the ICE agent, St. Paul. He's the pastor of that church. He was literally accusing them of intimidating him, and according to New York Times. Yeah, this was at City's Church in St. Paul.
Sure. Can probably climb in for
Yeah, you guys probably have it already in front of you, right? It's Greenwald or something like that. Oh, it's killing me. I literally had a whole story on him. I think I ripped it up, threw it out. There's another thing that's happened in this case. Tom Homan went in, right? Tom Homan's now taken over from Bavino. And Tom Homan, here's the guy who, it appears, took a allegedly $50,000 cash bribe. And then comes in and start talking about stuff like, we're going to soften up and we can make a deal with you down here. It's, we don't want to be doing this. And I talked to the president this morning and, he doesn't want to see people killed and neither do I. And I say a prayer every day for, fuck you, Tom Homan. You fucking probably took 50 grand and they dropped the charges at DOJ so you wouldn't go to fucking prison. And now the people in Minneapolis are supposed to trust you. They're supposed to trust you. to be doing the right thing in Minneapolis. Hilarious. David Easterwood. That's it. David Easterwood. And Easterwood basically came in with saying that he was worried that there might be a mass shooting at this event where they were protesting him. All these little people coming in and yelling, Renee Good. That's what they were yelling. Renee Good, Renee Good. And apparently that scared him. Think about that. Think about the idea that this guy, when these protesters came in and they were yelling for Renee Good back and forth, it's kind of like a pep rally, that bothered the clergy. That bothered the parishioners. A person was murdered in their town by ICE officials, and this guy was scared for his life. That's a fucking joke. Think about that. This guy was worried something was going to happen to him. Something was going to happen to him. Yeah. Here's what he said. I knew I had a note on this, but he thought it was a potential prelude to a mass shooting. Who are the people doing shooting around Minneapolis in the last couple months? It hasn't been protesters. You did have a guy with a gun, but he never pulled it. But all your ICE people have been blowing people away and spraying them with pepper sprays. And the head of ICE in Minneapolis and in St. Paul was worried that there was going to be this was a potential prelude to a mass shooting. There's no evidence of that. Did they arrest anybody with a gun? No. They always come at you with this shit where they make these accusations and nobody ever asks them for the proof. That's where the courts will work this shit out. The courts will ask you, well, what proof did you have of this? And the defense counsels will say, why did you think it was a prelude to a mass shooting? Did you see a gun? Did somebody pull a weapon on you? So, this shit is, nobody asks them questions. It's hilarious that the person who's in charge of St. Paul ICE has the nerve to suggest that he was worried for his own safety and those of his churchgoers. The fact that they were worried when somebody was actually saying Renee Good tells you everything you need to know about their Christianity. They should have been jumping in too and saying Renee Good, Renee Good. She's the one who got blown away by the person that this pastor was in charge of ICE forces in that region. The prosecutors in the case for the DOJ claim that these reporters have crossed the line from activity protected by the First Amendment to impeding law enforcement. In this case, a church protest, violating others' rights. Again, hilarious to listen to the Department of Justice suggesting that other people's rights are being violated at a church service where all they're doing is yelling Renee Good. No violence. Donald Trump was saying in social media posts, I think it was this morning, that Mr. Preddy was a antagonist and potentially an insurrectionist. This is the President of the United States saying this about this man who they fucking murdered. Okay? Has he forgotten completely about January 6th? Nobody at this church service, by the way, damaged anything that I've heard of. Nobody pulled out any weapons. Nobody tried to burst through the doors of the church to hurt anybody. They didn't put any crosses on the front lawn and threaten to hang this pastor. That all happened in January 6th under President Trump. And by the way, Jack Smith, the prosecutor who was prosecuting, the special prosecutor, special counsel who would have been prosecuting Donald Trump had the Roberts Court not given them a free pass when they decided that presidents couldn't be charged with crimes if it was in the official act of duty. That president, Jack Smith, said he would have been charged with crimes for that, related to that, specifically. This, however, was a federal crime worth prosecuting. Psh, the irony of it all. Sorry, I got some notes, man. You know what I'm saying? This stuff is making me crazy. So this is about intimidation, intimidating journalists, intimidating protesters. And remember I talked the other day, some of you probably listened to it, when I said you need to be really careful about how you protest. You can use that phone. They see the phone as a weapon. Don't be fooled. That phone is more dangerous to them than a gun because it means they're going to jail if they do something wrong. So when you go into these things, you have to go and say to them, this phone protects both you and me. It's just a phone. It's not a pew pew. It protects you and me. And as long as you're doing everything legally, sir, you have nothing to worry about. Let me back up and get out of your way. They're looking for protesters and journalists who are impeding their work. So don't impede their work. Back the fuck up. Give them space. Be polite. Try not to blow whistles right in their face. Stand back and blow a whistle. They can't do any shit about that. That's not impeding their investigation. So, they can send all the signals they want to intimidate and arrest people. But if you're playing by the rules and everybody's filming everybody playing by the rules, it makes it a lot harder for them to convict you of anything. Doesn't mean they won't try to charge you and spend your whole family bank account on it. But that's when the ACLU and those organizations get involved too and take some of these cases pro bono. And that you're going to see more and more of that. I saw the protests today in Minneapolis and tens and tens of thousands of people. This is who the Justice Department and President Trump call agitators. It's loaded language. It's a very important term, loaded language we use in writing. When you use certain words that define somebody, when you could use a word that's not as defining, that's loaded language, and people do it. So as propagandists do it better than anybody. Instead of a protester, you're now an agitator. Instead of a protester, you're a domestic terrorist. And that allows them to raise the temperature in the room. And so you need to correct them. When somebody says you're an agitator, what proof do you have that I'm an agitator, a domestic terrorist? Have you been through this person's records and seen they've made threats against anybody? No. Then why do you call them a domestic terrorist? Because they're at a protest? Because they're holding a sign up? No, that's American for protesting. And call them out on that shit. It is Orwellian, by the way, Gigi. It is Orwellian. There are ways to record other than a phone. You get these glasses now, right? You can wear glasses, say, "Hey, how you doing, officer?" Right? Those things are becoming popular. Somewhere around $200 or $300, you can get a pair. I used some in Iraq a couple years ago. Yeah. See if I'm missing anything here. Another thing, when Homan came in and the other day and had his press conference and he was saying, the state, if they would have just cooperated with us on these people that they have detained in the criminal court system in these prisons who've been convicted of crimes, we want to deport them. And we've been trying to get those people all along. There's like 1,350 of them. We've been trying to get our hands on them so we could get rid of them, and you are not cooperating. That's a bullshit distraction. There's separate issues. For one, if you're convicted of a crime and you're in jail, you're not going to harm anybody on the streets of Minneapolis. You're in fucking jail. So that's one issue. And in those cases, I think you will find people willing to cooperate. But did you hear Homan say they're going to reduce their force because they're being like, oh shit, it looks like an army's here, let's reduce it. But in the same regard, they're opening, a prison up to house more people. Have they said that they're going to not do the warrantless entries anymore? No, they haven't. Do they still have people wearing military equipment? You guys tell me in Minneapolis. Are they still wearing their flak vests and helmets and walking around, some of which have M4 rifles with silencers on them, military grade silencers? For what? Crowd control? So no, they're not changing their tactics. They're changing their message. Don't listen to what they say unless you can verify it. Watch what they do. And what they're doing is they're softening you the best that they can so that they can continue to do the same shit they've been doing, because the people that have not been released to them through the prisons are not a threat to society. They're in jail. In fact, you can make a pretty good argument that they should stay in jail if they're murderers or rapists or whatever until their prison sentence is done, and then let Tom Homan deport them. This other thing where you see it all over my page, right? People are putting these memes in. You always know the MAGA people because they have no intelligence to make an argument with a sentence. They just put a meme in there. When I was talking about the people who were killed in ICE custody, what about these people? Say their names. And they put like 20 victims of violent crimes up, apparently from people who were killed by undocumented immigrants. Without listening to the argument or coming back when we say, well, here's the actual graphics on the per capita of U.S. citizens killing people with violent crime and undocumented immigrants. And guess what? It's higher when it's a U.S. citizen involved. There's been multiple studies that have shown that, most of which using the U.S. government's own data. So they don't stick around for that argument. They just drop a meme and bolt. Some of them are trolls, some of them are bots, some of them aren't, some of them are just dumb. And you need to push back on those people when they suggest you are, violent, insurrectionist. And so don't let them use that language. So I think that's probably all I have to say right now. Will probably be pretty long, but let's take some questions. Holly's taking some down, and I'll try to answer some.
Yeah. So first question is, how do we prove now what's going on? They'll just lie and say they were cheated.
Prove what? I need to know what you're asking me. How do we prove what they're doing? First of all,
maybe inside the church. What was really.
Well, I mean, I imagine people inside the church, for instance, were shooting some video of their own. And Don Lemon and those guys have whole cases. By the way, I haven't seen all Don Lemon's tape either. So you have to be really careful about defending people when you haven't seen all the evidence, which is what we always ask for, right? In a justice system. See all the preponderance of the evidence. Give people the presumption of innocence until they've gone through courts. I'm making assumptions as a private citizen saying I think it's horseshit because I know from experience you charge people trespassing for the shit. But how do you know that the government's not lying to you? I mean, proof, trust but verify. Everything is trust but verify. If they can't verify it, then it's not credible. And I just say that to them, like when you're a journalist, especially, and I ask a question. Oh, by the way, Trump had another thing, I think it was yesterday or today, where an ABC reporter was trying to ask him a question, and he did the same shit that I did a video on a month ago. It was a female reporter. And the first thing he did, I told you he was going to do this every time. Who are you with? ABC News. Fake news. I didn't call on you, and you're loud. And she just shut up. Try that on me sometime. I promise you. I'd be like, you don't talk to me that way, Mr. President. You don't talk to people in the room this way. We're doing our job, and we're asking you a question. If you can't handle the heat, you shouldn't be sitting behind that desk, sir, respectfully. But they're so scared that what is he going to do? Kick him out of the room? Who cares? You'd be a hero. It'd be fun. People would think you're awesome. Another one?
A couple of comments. There are ways to record other than phones.
Yeah, there are ways to record other than phones. There's tape recorders. There's glasses. There's smaller cameras. When I was working in Somalia, and I had people stealing my cameras all the time. In Egypt, people stealing our cameras. I had a pen that had a really great little camera on it, and it had a little thing inside of it. You buy those things for a couple $100, and you put a couple gigs of stuff on there and you could shoot stuff and you could act like you're just holding your pen and recording people. It's great. There's all sorts. And there's nothing illegal about recording people in a public place. They're in a public place, Careful when you record people on the telephone though. When you record people on the telephone, find out your state's laws. There's consent laws. There's one-party consent and there's two-party consent. And one-party consent means you can record them if you know that you're recording them. Two-party consent, depending on your state, means both parties have to know you're recording them. But when you're in a public place, you're allowed to record people. It's your First Amendment right. As long as you stay out of their way when they're trying to work. What else?
So this is an interesting comment. Someone said there's intentional blurring of the lines. The church is complicit. Church policy is reserved for members. It's their brand.
Yeah. Talking about churches being complicit in this stuff and it's their brand only. Yeah. So I just saw a statistic the other day that said Donald Trump with evangelicals is plus 34 points up with evangelicals. I mean, what brand of Christianity supports this guy? It makes me proud to be agnostic, frankly. And there's a reason 40% of the U.S. population now has no religious persuasion because they see what's going on with a lot of and I do not mean to bang on Christians. I'm not going to, like we have a pope right now and I'm not Catholic. And, the last two popes, as far as I can tell, are being very pious men that care about individuals and care about the poor and but they're not popular with a lot of people who are conservative in this country because apparently following Jesus' path is not very popular anymore. The writings of Jesus have not become, it's kind of touche. And so I think you'll see that, and especially, a a lot of white Christian churches, they're not following the teachings of their prophet. And, that's how a guy could be a pastor at a church and in the same breath be head of St. Paul's ICE, watching what they do there and just not even blinking an eye. And when, instead of saying, these guys were just coming here and protesting, and we don't think it's appropriate that they came here and protested. And I felt like I was being surrounded a little bit, but I know what they're feeling right now. This is Minneapolis, St. Paul. These are very passionate people. They think that what we're doing is wrong. I don't believe what we're doing is wrong. Maybe there's some tactics they don't agree with. We're trying to work that out now. Secretary Holman's here trying to figure that. None of that. It's like immediately went to a potential prelude to a mass shooting. You see, it's a Newt Gingrich form of attack. Keep the media and all the members that are against you on the defensive all the time. There's no reasonable, hey, I get it. There's no middle ground, right? So that's how they beat you. They just keep you on the defensive all the time. They charge you with crimes that are bullshit. They argue all that what you're doing is potentially a prelude to a mass shooting when you're just going in there and yelling Renee Good's name. They forget who was shot. It wasn't the pastor. It was Renee Good 3 times for no fucking reason. And the FBI will not let the locals investigate it. And they're going to investigate it. Tom Homan had the nerve to sit up there the other day and say, I'm not going to say anything about this investigation because I've been in this federal law enforcement for a long time. And even though other people are calling these people certain things, I'm not going to prejudice the investigation. I have my ideas, but I'm not going to say what I think it is. Nice, Tom. Nice. You don't want to talk about it because, first of all, that should be the actual answer, right? Tom actually knows the script. But in this administration, he's the only guy who apparently thinks that. He knows there's people out in front of him saying it, so he doesn't need to say it. That he thinks these people are bad people, that, Preddy was an insurrectionist, that, she was trying to run over his officer, right? He doesn't need to say that. The investigation will take care of it. But here's the problem. They're not going to investigate it and find this person guilty of anything. That's why they will not let the Minneapolis Police Department get involved in this. Not even let them see the evidence. That day will come. Trust me. These people are not, I think Minneapolis police and prosecutors and attorney generals in the state of Minnesota are going to figure out a way to charge people with crimes who've done criminal things. I really believe that. They're outgunned right now, but ICE can't stay in Minneapolis forever. And there are witnesses to all these events. So while you may not get the benefits of all the FBI investigative tools, you'll still have enough to charge these people with murder. There's video of all of it. And I really believe that. So what else?
I think this may have been in reverse, but the question was, how do I respectfully explain that the Epstein files are a distraction?
Well, I don't think the Epstein files are a distraction at all. I think the Epstein files are very important because there's 200 plus victims we know of. And there's, according to these women, there's thousands of victims. And so I think they're a very important story if you care about who your president is. And if you care about all the rich people having a second class, a 2-tiered system of justice where they all just fly away into the ether and everybody else gets charged with crimes like protesting, right? I mean, for decades now, these people have gotten away with sexual assault and they have the names and video and everything in their fucking hands and they're wasting their time charging Don Lemon for asking questions in a church service. I mean, that's off its rails. So that's not a distraction. It's just, there's a lot of things that are going wrong and it's hard to keep track of the ones that are important. Epstein, ballots in Fulton County, tariffs, taking over Greenland. Those are not distractions. Those are serious issues. The loss of NATO, our dollar plummeting right now. The Japan bond market and how that affects the European bond market and the whole concept that in Europe, they want to stop buying American. That doesn't sound bad for the economy, does it? Tariffs, think about, I'm probably going to do something on this in the next few days, but think about the government buying things for the U.S. government from foreign countries abroad. Who do you think's paying that tariff? Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars that the United States spends overseas to buy things to run the government. For instance, defense contract, parts for military equipment that is made by defense contractors, billions and hundreds of billions of dollars. And our companies over here will have to pay tariffs for stuff like that And who do you think's paying the tariff? Normally, it's the person on the other end. Like me, when I bought my cabins, I had to pay some tariffs. But in the case of, say, defense contractors or other organizations that have to buy things, that's paid for with taxpayer dollars. So we will be tariffing ourselves as taxpayers. That's a big one. I haven't had time to get into it. I'm working on it. So, yeah. What described? What happened to Don Lemon? I think you can read that. I mean, what happened to Don Lemon is he went in a church service, and he was accused of disrupting a church service, and they charged him with these federal crimes for it. That's the long and short of it. But it's bullshit because he has First Amendment right to report. What else?
Glenda wants to know: are there people out there pretending to be you?
Oh, I mean, there are definitely people out there that have pages that we found in the last week that are using my From the Writer's Cabin picture, and they're trying to engage with people online to try to get them to join their pages. So when you're looking at my page From the Writer's Cabin, if you see things like underscores between the word or underscores at the beginning and the end of sentence, or maybe another piece of grammar that's in there that's not supposed to be there, it's probably a fake page. So, you can always, if you want to know whether it's somebody, when they send you a message, whether it's me or not, ask them, hey, what do we call ourselves again? Misfits. Where are you from again? Oh, you were both American and a Canadian citizen. Oh, really? Where? Ottawa, Canada. Louisville, Kentucky. I split my time between the two. My dad got divorced from my mom. If he knows enough details about me, you'll probably be able to fish it out pretty quickly. What's the name of my dog? George, right? What's my favorite thing? Hockey. Where did I work? 60 Minutes, National Geographic, Vice. And if you look at the messages and they come in and they're filled with bad sentence structure, bad grammar, bad spelling, emojis, shit like that, I don't use those I might use an emoji, maybe, but I don't make my life emojis. I'd rather use a word. And if I have bad grammar, if I don't know the difference between a conjunction and a period and start of a new sentence, I do use and start as a start of a sentence a lot. So if you see that pattern, it's probably me. So I'll say something like, I'll have a sentence and I'll put a period, then I'll start with a capital and as a conjunction. And I just do that because rhythmically, that's part of the way I speak and talk. But you won't see bad grammar. I used to copy edit. I can't do it. Somebody caught me today. I had typed something, can't remember what the word was, but I think it autocorrected to another word. And two people caught it. And I went back to correct it, and I can't correct it in the comments on Substack. It makes me crazy because I'm so, I write for a living. So I can't write like one of my college students at Columbia when I text, in fact, they can't when they write me. I fucking light them up for it because I can't understand what they're saying. What else?
Do you think the Epstein files will ever be released with only the victims' names redacted?
I don't. I think that they're going to drag this out through the entire administration until some judge orders them to release it. And I think it's going to go to the Supreme Court. And I think the Supreme Court, I don't know what they're going to rule on stuff. They're a 6-3 majority conservative. Again, it'll come down to whether these great Christians believe in justice for people who are rape victims, or whether these great Christians want to protect the establishment that they spend so much time around. I'm not confident, but I do believe that the victims of Epstein should be very seriously considering. I see memes about it all the time, but I never see any evidence of it. They should be coming out and saying, "Here's a list of people, and here's what they did to us." And I think what they're worried about is being sued in a way that sues them into oblivion that they can't afford it, and that's a real concern. But somehow they need to figure this out because it's not going to come out any other way. All these FBI reports, these are not like accusations. These are people who sat down with the FBI and gave long, extended interviews on victim reports. And so, and again, when a lot of this stuff came out today, you're still able to show who the victim was. But the other names who were redacted, the perpetrators. So they can release all sorts of files, but they're going to protect the perpetrators. And they're going to say all the stuff about Donald's not true. It's fake news. And their 33% base is going to believe it. And they're going to try to steal the election through gerrymandering, through suppression of free speech to the journalists, and by stealing elections in states like Georgia, like trying to do now. Trying to figure out who's on the voter rolls, how they vote, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, that's why you have to continue to organize. What else?
What do you think about Alberta, Canada being courted by Trump?
I think that the situation with the Trump administration trying to court Alberta and potentially even Quebec is disgusting. it is. Yeah, I mean, they're not Canada's friend anymore. You can't, and I don't know when they'll ever be Canada's friend anymore. I think Carney pisses him off so much by speaking eloquently, like he did at the Davos Economic Forum, and then Trump comes up and speaks. There's a great column out there comparing the two speeches. It's hilarious. I wish I had it on right now. I'd tell you about it. But anyways, this great column that compares what Carney was saying in his speech and how intellectually articulate it was, with Trump blustering up there like a moron. And Trump doesn't like it because Trump's insecure, and so he will punish people and whole countries that he doesn't like. You saw that with Norway. He wants to tariff them, and you didn't let me have Greenland. Denmark didn't let me have Greenland. You should have given me the Nobel Prize. So he's going to tariff them over it. And he says he doesn't even pretend. He just says it. So he's vindictive to people and places that he doesn't like. And so what they're trying to do in Alberta, for those who are not caught up, Alberta's a largely very conservative state, and they've got a petition going on to try to separate from the rest of Canada. And you get a certain number of hundreds of thousands of signatures, and you can put it on the ballot for separation. My understanding, and I don't live in Alberta, is that about 20% of the constituency in Alberta is for separation. The rest are not. It may be a little bit higher. So it's probably not going to pass, but you never know. You never know what kind of weird shit happens in elections. And it's dangerous that they're suggesting they should separate. And then, with about 40% of the Quebecois in Canada kind of teeter on the edge of whether they want to separate or not, and having a referendum back in the 90s that it was like half a point from separating Quebec from the rest of Canada. Don't be surprised if they work that magic over there too. The Trump administration will do anything it can to punish people that it's not happy with. And with the Canadian government's decision to probably not buy the F-35 fighter jet from the United States and go with the Swedish Griffin, then he's angry about that. And so that's what also the whole situation came up where he said he was going to decertify 5,500 Canadian planes. Good luck with that. Decertify them if you want. And then you'll have about 4,500 Canadian planes that will not be flying in the United States anymore. That'll be hilarious. But again, he's poking at everything. He's going after Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, for bullshit, double, secret bullshit, and going after journalists, going after government officials, going after senators, charging senators and congressmen with crime, calling, the attack on Omar the other day when she was giving her speech, that she staged it and faked it without any proof whatsoever. Somebody walks up and sprays something on her, and they said, well, if she got something sprayed on her, she's so concerned, why did she go clean it off? Because she's proud. She's a proud Somali. I think she's Somali, right? She's a proud Muslim, and they don't like to be intimidated. And she didn't want to be intimidated. And God knows what she was sprayed with, But saying she faked it? I mean, have they investigated? Did they go and arrest the person who attacked a member of fucking Congress? They should be arresting that fucking person. It's a federal crime to attack a member of Congress. And they just blow it off like, oh, it didn't really happen. Amazing, crazy shit coming out of this administration. DJT is not just insecure. He's a narcissist who can't emotionally handle anyone who criticizes him. It's pathological. I agree with you 100%. I've been making this argument on a lot of my reels. Unfortunately, I'm not a therapist, psychologist, or psychoanalyst or anything. And it's hard for me to make the argument, except that I have personal experience with a member of my family who's like that. And it's the scariest thing you can ever imagine when somebody's pathological, because they cannot stand losing, and they get energy from negative attention as well as positive attention. So it doesn't matter, if they do something really horrible, they get all that energy coming to them. It feeds them. It's crazy. We have a mentally ill person in the White House. That's me. I'm not a journalist anymore. I'm just a commentator analyzing shit. That's what I think. So fuck him. What else?
What can we do to get rid of Stephen Miller?
Stephen Miller, little Nazi. Pee Wee Miller, we like to call him, right? I don't know. I mean, I think Stephen Miller is kind of walking on some thin ground, because the other day when Kristi Noem had the meeting at the White House and they were deciding her fate, Stephen Miller was kept out of that meeting and not invited to the meeting. And to me, that shows some signs that maybe Trump is getting a little fed up with him. These people, they don't understand that he throws people away like he does, a can of soda. And they all think they have a certain degree of power until they don't. Kelly, when he was in the White House in the first administration, he thought he had all this, and they chucked him away like it was nothing. That's what they do. They throw people away like they're garbage, and it'll happen to Stephen Miller at some point. But Stephen Miller's a useful um, idiot for them because he's preaching all the things, preaching all the hate that drives their base. Their base loves Stephen Miller. You know, uh, yeah, that's right. Not. There's a lot of treaty and tribal land. I'm pretty sure most councils are against it. Against what? Um,
Alberta.
oh, Alberta. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I hope so. Fuck. So the idea that anything would happen to Canada because this guy makes me crazy. Makes me crazy. Um, what else?
Someone said that your videos on YouTube are getting like 1 or 2 views, of people who've watched them, and now they're wondering if they can trust YouTube. I think
Uh,
most of them have received more than that.
yeah, I mean, so if they have just a few, I mean, I don't promote YouTube a lot, so not a lot of my followers are over there yet, and I can actually figure out a way to monetize my stuff on YouTube. So again, I just want you guys to understand, I hate being a used car salesman. I feel like it every time I talk about this, but I today, many of you probably online probably had a question answered from me today. I spent 6 hours definitely online answering people's comments and questions. And people say, don't do that. You're wasting your time, blah, blah. It's not that simple, man. It's like you guys are you're asking things that you want to know answers on that you don't feel like you can get them from any place else. So I want to hear what those things are. And then I want to develop strategies to cover as much of it as I can within the rhythm of what I can do in a given day. And so I definitely want to listen and read stuff from you. But again, I also get people who send me long clips of things that happen early in the news day. And I am a journalist. I've seen that stuff all day long. You don't need to send that to me. If you see something that is really unusual, send it to me. Otherwise, you've just made sure that I read another 300 DMs that day and responded to them. And I don't want you guys to think I'm ungrateful. I am, but like, if it's like going to a mathematician and going, "Hey, we solved 2 plus 2. It's 4," and then everybody in the room sends me a thing saying, "Yeah, the answer is 4." Jeff, did you know that? Right. So that's kind of like the hard thing that I got to deal with is the volume of things, and I can see how people who get millions of followers just at certain point don't respond to anybody anymore because they don't have time. But I don't want to be that. I mean, I like the fact that I have people here who are like-minded that, the following we're developing here are like-minded people. And I like that. And some people say don't answer the trolls or the people. I like responding to them too, because I shut them the fuck up because they don't have any answer for my answers. They put a little picture up of something and I go and say, well, here's the fucking study that says you're full of shit. And I like that. It gives me joy. And then I get joy when you guys read those comments and hit the like button, make them go away. Um, let's see. Trump's too long friends with Epstein and Miller. Yeah, we know that. What else, honey? Is there anything else?
Someone asked earlier, are there people out there trying to coordinate a peaceful revolution march like they did in 1989?
Up in Canada? A peaceful resolution? You mean up in revolution? Do you mean up in Canada? I'm sorry. I'm like, which 1989? The 1989 separation issue? I'm a little lost. Glenn Kirshner does a question night where people send questions in his notes hours before 5 or live. Yeah. I mean, I've already got hundreds and hundreds of questions from you guys today. But it's easier for me just to get it on the side when we're live because that means you've chosen to be here and you've chosen to participate. And I'm trying my best so that you guys see I'm responsive to that. I mean, a lot of you folks, some of you are subscribers and some are paid subscribers. That's also why on the paid subscriptions, those guys get a little bit more attention because there's not as many people on it. I only have 300 paid subscribers, and I have about 3,000 or something or unpaid subscribers. I'm trying to boost that number, and I'm also going to try to monetize the YouTube stuff because I can post stuff to here that goes straight to YouTube. But I don't talk about YouTube much, and I don't even go to the YouTube. If you put a question for me on YouTube, I won't even see it because I've got enough platforms now that I'm trying to manage, which is Facebook, 2 on Facebook, this one, and that alone generates thousands of comments and hundreds of emails a day, or DMs. Sorry. Sadly, I think people who are charmed by narcissists are like victims. Yeah, they are. They are. Yeah, they're like victims. Yeah, and it is a cult. You're right. Well, that's what we see with MAGA, I think.
Um, No one has asked to see Georgie yet. So
No one's asked to see.
I'm just gonna ask the question.
No one's going to ask
Where's
to see Georgie. God, you guys are so concerned with politics. Nobody cares about my sweetheart. Get him up on the stairs.
Come here, buddy. Come on.
Read some more questions while she's getting him up on the stairs. Anyone heard of crazy things going on with ICE in Philadelphia or other cities? Well, I know for sure in Philadelphia, I haven't seen them go into Philadelphia yet because Philadelphia came out strong and said, if you come into our city and commit crimes, we're going to arrest you. Very strong message. And I think also the Black Panthers in Philadelphia, and they're walking around with guns in Philadelphia telling ICE, yeah, come on. And I think that Donald does not want to see what happens when that happens. So he's going to places like Richmond, Virginia. And he recently sent some people into West Virginia, 3 miles from here. There's nothing in West Virginia, you know? Yeah. Here's Georgie. There he is. You a good boy? Yeah, he's a good boy. Maybe we'll feed him a cookie. The rest of Dante is absolutely a scary cross the line moment for sure. Yep, it is. And especially for me, it's like reporter, journalist, all that kind of stuff. I expect someday somebody's going to show up at my house. The first thing they'll do, mark my words, they'll show up at my front door and they'll say, Mr. Newton, we've seen some stuff you've been posting online. Are you Mr. Newton? And I'll say, yes, I am. And they'll say, we'd like to talk to you about that. And I'll say, do you have a warrant? And they'll say, no. And I said, do you suspect me of a crime? Well, no, we just want to talk to you. I said, well, I don't talk to people like you. I don't like you. So please go away. Get off my property. That's what's going to happen. The next time they'll come, they'll figure out something like a Don Lemon and they'll arrest me for something. And my wife will be having to fucking hire an attorney or whatever. It's just the way it goes. It's a part of the business that I'm in. It's a part of being an American, frankly, is that you have to be willing to stand up to authority. That's why the Constitution exists, because they didn't want to have a king and they didn't want to have somebody telling you what they couldn't do all the time. And if you want that right, you have to fight for it or it goes away. We're watching. When people don't use their rights, they go away. Somebody snatches it from them. And I refuse, as a journalist of 30 plus years in war zones, being around the craziest fucking people trying to kill me, to be intimidated by this guy. Are you kidding me? No fucking way. The guys that show up at my door, I will know they're untrained and they're not anything like the guys I was in combat with, like, Navy SEALs and 82nd Airborne guys and, Ranger Battalion guys. And they're not like those guys. And some of them may have been, in the U.S. military, but they were the scragglers who couldn't get a job after that career was over. And they're the people who probably, a lot of them were kicked out, and some guys that couldn't pass law enforcement tests. So those guys are untrained, and I'll treat them as untrained people. I'll be polite. I'll tell them to go away. And it'll happen. And we already had somebody the other day trying to threaten me, like a couple people in one day threatened me. One guy said, let's talk about where you live, or let's talk about your address. I'm like, really? You think I'm that guy? You can find me. Look me up. I'm here. I have a concealed carry permit. I'm right to the door. But, you have to stand up to people. I have a thought about that, Megan. I have been following their journey.
I was wondering if I still harass the monks.
Oh, I don't think they're going to harass the monks. I think the monks are here on a tourist visa probably, and they're walking around spreading their thing. And I think the monks are probably almost done. I think they're probably close to done their journey. They were last time I looked like a week ago, they were in South Carolina. So unless they're going the other way.
In Virginia now.
They're in Virginia? They're heading to California. They're going east to west, or
they came from Texas, and I think they're going all the way to DC.
Oh, okay. I don't think they're going to harass the monks. Why would you harass a bunch of monks? Who knows? I hope not. Every time I see one of those monk videos, it really touches me. Even as an agnostic person, I think, they're just going spreading kindness and shaking people's hands and giving them flowers and putting things on their wrist. Who could be mad at a monk? I mean, they invented beer. Yeah. March in DC and will speak to Congress. That's fantastic. That's something I'd want to see, actually.
What do you think happened to Mark Kelly?
I think Mark Kelly's going to kick his ass. And I think they charged somebody else too. I can't remember who. But I think Mark Kelly's going to kick their ass. They're going to try to take him through a non-criminal process. They'll take him through administrative process. And administrative processes are a lot less public. And he can probably, I think, he might be able to demand a UCMJ proceeding. He might be able to demand a Uniform Code of Military Justice trial. But I think he's turned around. He's going to sue them. And I don't think there's any chance in hell that he'll lose that case. But again, that one is a distraction. That's Pete Hegseth trying to be a dick and distract from other stuff going on. And, it's funny when you look at, I think it's either Annapolis or West Point. almost identical to what Kelly said in that 90-second video with those other members, is on a plaque at West Point. So that's art. No, that's Exhibit A. You know, he'll win that one. He's too smart for them. You know, and Heggs, he said, and listen, you guys are doing. A lot of people, National Guardsmen, went over there and they gave up their jobs and they went over to Iraq and Afghanistan. They fought. You heard Craig last night, Craig Renault, the director friend of mine, talk about how they followed the National Guard in Iraq for a year. They lost a lot of guys. But in the same regard, Pete Hegseth, a National Guard major, and you put that up against the guy who was a Navy captain, it's the equivalent of like a U.S. Army colonel, and that guy's running the fucking he's Secretary of Defense. Please. And that's not Secretary of War, by the way. That's mandated by Congress. So he can put whatever he wants on the signs. It doesn't make it so. Just like the Kennedy Center will always be the Kennedy Center. And as soon as Trump leaves, they're going to yank that name right off the building. Vindman said he would come out of retirement to defend Kelly. Yeah. Both the Vindmans are great Americans, you know. We can't believe what they're doing to Ukraine. But I love both those guys. And they gave their career up to tell the truth. Right? They gave their career up to tell the truth. Amazing, amazing Americans. What else?
Someone wants to.
We're going to do about 3 more questions, then we're going to let you guys go because it's Friday night. We know you guys are.
Tracy wants to know if you think Trump is trying to push the citizens so he can invoke the Insurrection Act and affect the midterm vote.
Absolutely. I think he would love to do that. And I think he's in a delicate balance. Look at that. There's the writer's cabin. Misfits Club. Yes, I think he's trying to do that for sure. He's in a delicate balance because I think there are members of Congress now who are fucking fed up with him, both in the Senate and the House side. And if he's not careful, they'll vote him out of office because I think some of them are, maybe they're not courageous enough now, but if you start putting U.S. military troops on all the streets of all American cities and calling everybody domestic terrorists, yeah, that's not good. And they know that. That's why they fought to push back on the Greenland situation. And that's kind of like, I'm still going to have a deal with Greenland. That was a week and a half ago. Where's the deal with Greenland? It's not going to happen. There's no deal with Greenland. There's never going to be a deal with Greenland. Never. They're never going to give up their country. So, yes. Does he want to push the Insurrection Act? I believe he does. And any other thing that will allow him to delay elections, not hold elections, or hold on to power. And those could be any number of possible ways that he would do that. He might just decide to stay in and not hold elections. I mean, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic about the whole thing, but he's exhibiting behavior of a totalitarian dictator. There's no question about that. Every place I've ever seen a dictator, and I've been to these countries, they act just like this. And you know who they go after first? The media. They go after the media first because they want to control the message. War is 50% kinetic and 50% information. And so if you control the information, you can then take the other part of that and be kinetic. What do you think the ICE people are doing right now? They're being kinetic. They're shooting people. They're dragging people around. They're throwing them in jail. That's kinetic. That's war. Now you have to control the words, the narrative. So you go after the media. You get rid of all the Pentagon press corps is no longer anymore. They had to all turn in their badges because Pete Hegseth, who used to work for Fox, said, what you have to do is you have to agree to let us see all your stories before you publish them. And they can't do that because that's horseshit and it's against the First Amendment. Somebody should be suing them over that. They probably are. But all the great correspondents that were in there asking tough questions, they're not there anymore. Laura Loomer, was in one of those. Matt Gaetz, remember him raping the 17-year-old? He was in a Pentagon press briefing. So they're putting idiots in there and letting anybody sit at anybody's desk that used to be sacrosanct for people like the Washington Post and New York Times. And those desks are not occupied by people anymore. They're gone. They wouldn't sign this waiver to agree to these terms. So they turned in their press credentials and left the building. So now when you go to war with Venezuela, did you notice that this last time you didn't see any of the war? First time in history, you didn't see the war. There was no fucking buddy covering it from ships. Nobody with cameras in the aircraft that were taking out the radar systems or the surface-to-air missile systems. There was no camera footage released of the Delta Force guys coming in on fast ropes and taking Maduro out. You always see that. That was what I did for a living all the time, every day. And they're gone now. And nobody's doing it. At some point, he'll want some credit for things he's doing. So he'll start inviting some of these other morons on these missions. That you'll see it. But you know who else turned in their credentials at the Pentagon? Fox News. Even they couldn't stand it. So they got rid of them and they controlled the message there, the military message. And they didn't care that these guys turned in their credentials. Now they can do things in secret. And then the White House, they kicked out all the good reporters and they started flooding the zone with all these idiots, morons, and, independent reporters who run blogs that nobody ever watches except the MAGA people. And now those are the people asking the questions. And they're all like, "Oh, hi, good to see you, Mr. President. How are you doing? Oh, can you give us an update on Melania's movie numbers?" You know what I mean? That's what the media in there is doing now. And they got thrown out today, or it was today or yesterday. They got thrown out of what was supposed to be a media opportunity. So he spoke for a while, and they're supposed to take questions, and he chucked them all out. And who put up with it? These sycophants that work in there. Because real media people would say, "Mr. President, you said you were going to take questions. Why are you scared to take questions?" Nobody said that. They all stood there like, dumb driven cattle. You know what I mean? Heading off to slaughter. So that's what you get. They're now controlling the message. Don't think for a second that they're unhappy with that. They've created this atmosphere. And now Caroline Leavitt doesn't have to worry about anybody asking an intelligent question that her 28-year-old mind can't handle. Because now all the people in there are morons. You think if I'm talking to Caroline Leavitt, she'll get away with shit? I'd be like, you need to sit the fuck down and get your facts straight. I probably wouldn't use the word fuck. I'd be nice because I can be, by the way, I can be very polite and cutting when I'm talking to you and you're the president's press secretary. And I can even smile when I do it. But they don't have those people anymore. They're clever like that. They're just all idiots. They don't have to answer questions. And they get softball topics and throw them at them and they think they're doing their job. And some are paid quite well, by the way, because they're sponsored by, all these other, places like the Heritage Foundation and X, those kind of places have money. Facebook probably has a correspondent there for all I know. What else?
Just a shout out to Steph, who is late to the conversation because she just got home from playing hockey. It's badass.
Where are we playing hockey, Steph? Oh, Mary Jo, I appreciate it too. I know I appreciate you have to go too if you have to go. We're probably gonna do like 2 more questions. Where'd you play hockey, Steph? Steph, Bayfield, Ontario. All right, baby. I used to play in Nepean. I played in Nepean and what is now the Stevie Eiserman Arena. So yeah, awesome.
And then lastly, someone asked about merch. Yeah.
Somebody asked about merch. My favorite question.
Do we sell merch?
We do. If you want to look at any of our merchandise like this, these are mugs we also have mugs with Georgie. See Georgie? Oh yeah, we have hats that say from the Writer's Cabin. And we have t-shirts that say, liars and hypocrites with a big arrow through it. We have from the Writer's Cabin stuff. We have mugs of Georgie at a typewriter wearing some profound looking intellectual glasses. We have all sorts of stuff like that. Holly put it together like a week ago and we've sold some merch. We get like a few bucks from each thing because I think the manufacturers take the most, but it does help. If you can't buy a subscription or something, you can pick up some merch. And when you send pictures, we're going to post them. Oh, next year, we finish our cider bar / gourmet shop on our property. And we're going to have an ABC license where you come in, do cider and stuff like that. And we've decided we're going to call that the Misfits Club. So people are going to come and stay at the Misfits Club and have cider or whatever. And we're going to put people that send pictures in, they're wearing their t-shirts or hats and stuff. We're going to frame those and put them all over the wall of the cider bar. So the Misfits Club's going to have pictures of people who are supporters of our effort here. Which is pretty cool.
Where can people get?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I would go to the From the Writer's Cabin Facebook page.
Yeah, that's the only place we have it right now.
I'll put a link in the Substack.
Yeah, Holly will put a link in the Substack, but it's From the Writer's Cabin on Facebook, okay? And go there, follow us there as well. And as you go down the page, you'll see something that'll say like Shopify or something maybe?
I think it says merch store.
Merch store, Shopify or something, but it's like a little link. You hit that and it opens up and then you hit another little button and it shows you all the merchandise. Mm-hmm. So we really appreciate that. And really, if you're not a subscriber, these are the kind of things that, paid subscribers are going to have more of because I can spend more time with them. So, that's my used car salesman pitch for the day. We're trying to get like right now I have 300 followers. I'm trying to get like paid subscribers. I'm trying to get like at least 1,200. Um, that'll be awesome. That'll allow me to make enough money to where I can spend all this time full time and I can hire somebody to do the stuff up the cabins that helps keep them open. Because right now we have got like 7 cabins that aren't open right now because she and I haven't had time to clean them in the last couple of days. So we have to clean them so we can get them open for people to go on a snowshoe, go on skiing and stuff like that because I'm doing this shit all day. So, yeah, I try to get out of journalism. You guys just fucking drag me back in. What are you doing? You're making me crazy. I don't sleep anymore. I get text messages at 3:00 in the morning. Come on, people. All right. Love you guys. If I wasn't 3,000 miles away, I'd be there. Cheryl, you're here in spirit, buddy. We appreciate it. All right, everybody. Good night. We'll have more stuff tomorrow. Hope you've asked some of your questions. And if you like what we talked about tonight, I know it was long. Make some notes on our page so we know that you like our content, and make some notes on there about what things you like to talk about. Some of which I can't dive. So you know what? I have friends that study newspapers like the Washington Post, New York Times, and all that kind of stuff. And if I have something that's really great investigative and I haven't got time to work on it, I pass those ideas on to them. And I did too, in fact, today. So we'll see more stuff on some of the things that I've discovered in some of the reporting I've done. So everybody, thank you, everybody. Have a good night and leave some notes and tell us what you liked or what you didn't like and what kind of stuff you'd like us to cover in the future. All right. Have a happy Friday night and talk to everybody later. All right. Night, Misfits. Georgie.
Oh, cookie?
On Cookie? We're going to feed Georgie a cookie as we're signing off. Oh, somebody wants to see Dixie. Yeah. I have to admit, Dixie, I love her, but her ex-husband named him Dixie and he's from Mississippi. And I would change her name in a heartbeat if I thought it wouldn't, but she feels shame for that name. I don't know what to say.
Oh, here. They can't see her. Oh,
Here you go.
oh, big girl. Oh,
She's a fatty. There's Dixie. There's Dixie. And here's Georgie. Oh, he's going back up. All right, I'll give Georgie a kiss and I'll let Holly sign out. Here we go. Here, big boy. Yeah. He's a Springer Spaniel, so if you ask, Georgie's a Springer Spaniel. Good night, everybody.